Yeah, Catherine, many people are saying don't expect too much from this G20, and there are various European leaders who are looking like they might stamp their feet a little.
Yes, I think you're going to see an awful lot of grandstanding, and not just from the Europeans, though clearly Nicolas Sarkozy is leading the charge there. I mean, I was in Berlin last week talking to members of the government there, and there are very definite strains within the differences in what people are looking for, but everybody is very much aware of the fact that they do need to come up with some kind of convincing communique, some kind of appearance of pulling together, because actually the absence of such an outcome would be really damaging at this stage.
OK, Catherine, may I stay with us? Tom Rivers as well, as we watch those pictures from a short time ago of Barack Obama and his wife Michelle heading into central London after having arrived on Air Force One a short time ago. More analysis in a moment.
His first trip across the Atlantic as president, and he will be bringing with him a huge entourage, including chefs, a personal physician and hundreds of security officials. These are some live pictures at Stansted Airport, where he's going to be touching down before he's taken by Marine One helicopter to the US Ambassador's residence in London. And of course he's coming here to be present at the G20 summit later in the week. Well, also on board is the President's own armoured limousine, known in the business as the Beast. Our diplomatic correspondent James Robbins now reports.
The President heading out on his first long-haul trip. And first stop, Britain, a big win for Gordon Brown. Huge headache for everyone close to the planning of this visit. Because whenever the President moves, a small army moves with him to ensure the safety of the most powerful man in the world. Some travel on board Air Force One, one of two 747s like no other. They can be refueled in the air. And the President's most recognizable armored accessory, this one, the limo they call the Beast. No wonder. The armor of reinforced steel is at least 5 inches thick. The car's designed to withstand chemical attack as well as roadside bombs. Then there are the staff, up to 500. The White House won't say exactly how many. And an estimated 200 bodyguards for the President and First Lady to sweep every point they'll pass. Finally, there's Marine One, the presidential helicopter with its anti-missile defences, part of a fleet of choppers so some can act as decoys.
Protests we've seen already through the course of today. Let's go to central London, to the city, because Ben Brown is there at the Bank of England, and of course we've seen huge security, Ben, but how many protesters there with you?
Well, so far, Matthew, not very many, but they are just, we think, beginning to arrive. They've been told to converge at 4 underground stations near here: Moorgate, Liverpool Street, Cannon Street and London Bridge, and then come to the Bank of England here on Threadneedle Street. The protest itself is supposed to start at noon. They are on their way here now. In fact, just down there on Princes Street behind me, the first of those processions is just arriving. They're calling them the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, these 4 processions that are marching towards the Bank of England. Certainly the police are worried that there could be violence here, and city workers have been told to dress down, not to wear suits and ties, although a lot of them are saying that actually they're going to, in a show of defiance, wear the same suits that they wear all the time. I just saw one city worker in a bowler hat and a briefcase. There are shops around here, businesses and banks indeed, that have boarded up their windows because they are certainly anticipating violence. Some of the more extreme groups who are going to be coming here as part of the G20 meltdown coalition of protesters have been putting out leaflets saying hang the bankers, storm the banks. So certainly the police are fearing the worst, and the police operation here is absolutely massive. It's part of a 2-day police operation, one of the biggest that London has ever seen, costing something like £7.5 million. And already we know that, and here we go, we can see one of the effigies there, which is part of this idea of the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse coming in towards the Bank of England. So this really is the start of the protest that we're seeing here now. And G20 meltdown, this coalition of about 80 groups all together. They're saying that capitalism has failed, globalization has failed. They're also a mixture of environmental campaigners, anti-war campaigners too. And the protests that are going to be here at the Bank of England with their epicenter here, there are lots of other protests, well, 4 other protests in particular today. One at the European Climate Exchange just down the road at Bishopsgate. That's a separate protest. There's another anti-war protest outside the US Embassy in Grosvenor Square, moving on to Trafalgar Square, and another at the Excel Centre where the G20 summit actually gets underway tomorrow. So 4 different protests today, and that just gives you an idea of how difficult this is for the police to monitor.
We're told not to really expect them here until 12 o'clock, but the march from Moorgate has taken not too much time to arrive here, so Princes Street is obviously going to be completely blocked up now. Traffic is not going to be able to get through there.
And I saw the young chap there being pulled around the by this
You're watching Sky News. We're live right outside the Bank of England, the heart of the City of London. 4 groups of protesters have gathered to the north and south of the city. This is the first group have marched down from Moorgate Station, just a few hundred metres to the north of the Bank of England, and just seen one incident early on where the police seemed to intervene with one young man. They've taken him aside there, and his friends saying that the police have been a little heavy-handed there. It's one of the more colourful protesters. Now, I believe we've got one of our reporters, Alistair Bunkle, in the midst of that crowd somewhere. Let's get a sense of what's happening on the ground with Alistair. Tell us where you are, Alistair. What's happening?
We're part of the march that left Liverpool Street about 45 minutes ago, and we arrived at the Bank of England in the last couple of minutes, and a couple of the marches converged. Do you know the 4 horses of the apocalypse are leading these marches from various corners around the city, all converging on the Bank of England. We were part of the red horse, and the green horse is also here. And the police, what they're doing is they're trying to keep the 2 separate marches apart, and so they're forming a barrier between the 2 groups of protesters. And a group of probably about 50 or so right in front of the police haven't taken kindly to that. They're trying to push forward, and they're pushing the police to try and join the 2 groups together. I think there must be a couple of thousand people here, we estimate, and more to follow. An awful lot of press as well, it must be added. But it's been, to this point, extremely good-natured. The police have been taking the march along at a fairly sedate pace, making sure that they keep control of it. There's an awful lot of people who work in and around the streets that we've been marching through that have been leaning out their windows, taking photographs, and anyone who has office buildings leading onto the street have made sure they've locked their doors as the march passes them.
Not only outside the Bank of England, also outside the European Climate Exchange just down the road in environmental campaigners protesting there. Anti-war protesters are going to be outside the American Embassy as well. They're now singing "The People United Will Never Be Defeated." So they seem in very buoyant mood, Matthew, as you can see around here. And just behind me there, 2 of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse there. Symbolic effigies, really, if you like, of what they believe is the demise of capitalism. These are anti-capitalist protesters, anti-globalization protesters, anti-war protesters.
We can have a look. Let's just get out of the way. So James and I will move out of the way so you can have a look at the car. See, this is all anyone's really interested in here. Here it is. And people talk about it being armoured, that it can withstand chemical weapons attacks, and it does sound a bit like a helicopter taking off, I have to say, when it starts to move. And I think we saw it earlier trying to negotiate its way around this rather narrow street here. So I think it was about a 26-point turn to try and get around there. And of course, I remember last time when President Bush was here, of course, we're all standing here and then suddenly realised, how did it get here? Of course, it has to be flown over here in the back of an aeroplane. So you can just imagine the kind of work that has to go into getting all this kind of stuff here, as well as the entourage of about 500 people, we're told. And then, of course, it will go on to Europe. Wherever the president goes, it goes with him.
And if it went over your foot, you'd know about it, wouldn't it?
I think you would, yeah. You might hear me scream.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.